Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. My name is Marcia Malum, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and a St. Ben's alumna from the class of 1996. I'd like to begin our time together this evening by sharing our land acknowledgement. Both the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University occupy the original homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor, respect, and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples forcibly removed from this territory, whose connection remains today. St. Benedict's Monastery and St. John's Abbey previously operated boarding schools for Native children. Now, students, faculty, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native Nation neighbors. Thank you. Toward the end of this evening's episode, there will be time for questions. So if you have anything that you would like to ask, please click the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen to submit your question. Please note, you may need to exit out of full screen view to use the Ask a Question button. Tonight's session is being recorded and will be posted on our Alum Learning Consortium's past event recordings page in the next 1 to 2 business days. Now, please welcome our moderator, Heather Piper Olson, Vice President of Institutional Advancement.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. It's a delight to be with you this evening. I'm so happy to welcome the Chief Operating Officer for St. Ben's and St. John's, Kara Kolomitz. Welcome back, Kara.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have you here. How are you today?
Today, I'm wonderful, and it was 50 degrees in Minnesota. It was beautiful today.
It's a little chilly yesterday, and
A
then
little
today's
chilly,
real spring.
but
Saw
I'll take
Robin.
it. It was gorgeous.
It's good.
Doing very well, thanks.
So we are so happy to have you back at
Thank
St.
you.
Ben's at Home. And the last time you were here was just over a year ago. I think it was March still.
Okay.
And you and Richard Ice were just
yes.
introducing us to the new strategic plan,
Yes.
moving forward together. So we're going to get some updates on the plan. We want to find out some other things about
Okay.
your work as the Chief Operating Officer too.
Great. Love to spend the time with you.
That's great. So let's start there.
Sure.
So what does it mean to be the inaugural COO for St. Ben's and St. John's?
It's a great question. I would start by just saying it's a deep honor. It's something that I never even would have dreamt of having a role that was so entrepreneurial and kind of pioneering, and not only at two really important places in all of American higher ed, but to really have a roadmap for future generations and other colleges and universities. It has been just 2 years, very exciting. There is not an institution that welcomes people like CSB welcomes people. So
Benedict and hospitality.
yes, but that's just been so touching, and understanding the faithfulness of our founders and really honoring the mission of a women's college has been deeply important to me. When you say what does it mean, I don't know.
We're co-creating. Brian loves to say we're co-creating things. This is one of those things we're co-creating.
Co-creating. Yes, I like that. But what I would also say is that we are really embarking on a period of time for St. Ben's that we are really rising to be the best of the best, and we can be the best, and that is exceptionally invigorating. We have a lot of momentum, and I also think that it's even more important time civically to educate women, to provide an education for societal good. So encapsulating all of that, what does it mean? It means a really important opportunity I take very seriously, humbly honored, and so far very exciting.
So what exactly does the COO do? I know you get this question a lot. So.
I get it all the time. I think I've
Yeah,
shared that with
yeah.
you. Like, people are very brazen. And what do you do?
What do you do all
Yeah,
day?
what do I do all day? It's interesting the ways in which my position has allowed me to work with people to create some synergies, not only between campuses, how can we learn from each other in two separate operations, but also how do we leverage ourselves regionally, nationally, working really hard on brand. I know that you had Bessie Kershaw with you working really hard on enrollment. Ed Lamb is now with us, working really hard with our athletics programs. So really rising to that standard at a regional and national level. So I've loved doing that. I also work to find some synergies and efficiencies with our systems and revenue and some auxiliary areas. So we're trying to figure out how we can create some stronger back of the house things. And that's exciting. And then I always love to represent our staff, particularly human resources. And we're doing some really, I think, important employee relations, some work around best practices, and really moving the bar to become the preeminent employer, certainly in central Minnesota. So those are the things that I've loved doing. I think they're what I'm supposed to be doing.
I think so too.
So far,
I was going to ask what you do with your free time, but you don't have any. So
well, no, you know, it's one of the reasons why I've always worked on a college or university campus. The free time is the campus. They're just, whether you're at the BAC with an art exhibit, or you're watching a game, or you're listening to a lecture, or there's a student performance, there's always something on a college campus. We are very vibrant, and downtown St. Joe's is just, I think I might have said to you that if you could have a crush on a town, I would have a crush on St. Joe's. It's just such a lovely little island of a place to be. So I have free time and I enjoy it.
it's fun. I know for those of you who haven't been on campus lately, there's so much going on in campus too, but also St. Joe is really, it's hopping. It's a really fun place. So we invite you anytime, and you can come stop in and see Kara where you're here. So, so we've talked a little bit about what's in your portfolio of work, and I'm wondering if we could just for a second kind of talk about, I think about this is sort of a question that wasn't necessarily when we talked about, but you mentioned earlier that so many people are sort of curious about what we're doing here.
Yes,
and I think about that part of your role and sort of what are some things that like others could learn from your portfolio of work as they think about how they partner with other institutions. Like, we're not merged.
No.
So we're doing something else. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I love that question. I returned in February from the National Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities, and I was so proud to represent CSB and SJU there, because I could not walk very far without getting stopped by either former colleagues or people in the profession that I knew, like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? Or explain this to me, or how's it going, or we're rooting for you. So I was really proud of us. And as I spoke to some of our peers, I was so taken with how far ahead our boards have been. And it's, not in terms of a race, but just our boards have been so forward thinking about our futures. That would be my number one, that the administration and the faculty and the students, they can do a lot to prepare yourselves for the next generation of higher ed. But our boards, I think we're so lucky to have the boards that we've had and the good work they've done. And then, of course, our monastic founders, that they have really looked to the future, how to leverage us in the best way. I think the other piece that I have said to people around our model is that it's not the easiest thing.
No,
because
we are not doing this for efficiency.
Well, right.
Ever.
But it's the right thing to do for students, and it's the right thing to do for our missions. So you have to keep at it. You have to persevere, and you have to be patient, and you have to be humble, and you have to make some concessions, and you have to be able to see the other kind of point of view. And that's not always easy, but it has certainly been worthwhile for us.
It is radical to be in relationship the way we are. I mean, it really is this kind of, whereas we are constantly in conversation with one another, with others. And I think too often we talk about not wanting a divisive world. We talk about wanting to find compromise. It is very, very hard to not sort of want or look for a safer, quicker option that's just like one decider. It's not what we're doing here.
Yes, very, very well said. And it is true that on a daily basis, I'm struck that there are two ways of doing something very simple. And I think, oh, okay, well, we've got to consider the best way to do that for who we are. The last piece I'll just say about what we're doing is just, and I've talked about this, but the synergies between campuses and the faculty who have done this for many years, they've been one faculty, and the example that they set for the rest of us around cross-campus collaboration, collegiality, understanding kind of the rhythm of two campuses, they really set a good example. And I think that we're also lucky for that. So I have said to some of our peers in the industry, your faculty will be the very best barometer of how to encourage this or make this work. So I'm grateful to our faculty for that.
I mean, Brian says repeatedly, it's so rare you see faculty leading so much farther ahead than administration on an issue, but they really have done this for a long time. And again, it's really about the students, and it's in some ways maybe easier for them because they really are always student facing, and maybe that's not true of everyone, but it's amazing how we're able to find sort of common ground when we remind ourselves why we're here. It really is about the mission.
I couldn't say any better.
Yeah, or missions, I should say. So yeah, of course. So what do you love about being the inaugural COO?
What do I love about being an inaugural COO? Well, I love the blank canvas piece of it. I love the idea of problem solving to be our very, very best. That is a really exciting challenge. I love assembling these teams. We just have, I've said before, an embarrassment of riches with the talent that we have in our faculty and our staff. That's exciting. I love all of that. I particularly love our physical campuses, though. I just think it's so beautiful. I've said that even the snow in Minnesota is beautiful.
Yeah, we had a really pretty snow recently. I mean, it was like, why a late one? But like, it was
didn't
so
matter.
beautiful. It was a really pretty snow.
And I take a lot of pleasure and love physically being on these campuses.
They're well cared for. I mean, that's sort of Benedictine stewardship. Like, they're well cared for places, beloved. Yeah,
They
simple
are.
in their beauty, and
They are.
Yeah,
They are. I also think there's a particular charm at St. Ben's around the care of our artifacts, the beautiful pieces that have been here. If you're in the Teresa reception, just how beautifully and historically we've honored that space over the many, many years. I love walking through some of the collections in the libraries. We have beautiful historic collections. I really do think that we've done that in a unique way. It's really lovely.
So let's turn our attention to something else that I know you're very passionate about, and that's the people who work here at St. Ben's and St. John's.
Yes.
So at organizations like St. Ben's and St. John's, the human capital is often one of our biggest expenses. So why are faculty and staff worth the investment?
Oh, I like the.
It's a leading question.
I like the positioning on that. We have between the two campuses about 770 full-time employees. And that is the large chunk of expenditure. And when you said it's the most expensive, I kind of shrugged, because there, besides the instruction and the care for our students, there is then that second biggest expense is so valuable. It comes, of course, from our Benedictine values, the dignity of work and the dignity of individuals. But there is a really unique work ethic and kind of charism just sprinkled throughout St. Ben's and St. John's, just the joyfulness of working here. And I've said before that I hope that we would make the founders so proud if they could see us today. We really do have a sense of privilege of carrying these things forward, and particularly kind of the idea of wonder that our staff members have gone into this strong integration, it would be really easy. It's easier to say no, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to say, nope, that's not going to work. We're not going to do that. But our staff and faculty have been so brave and said, yeah, what are the possibilities and what could this look like? And that is a really fun place to work. We work hard. I think we play hard. We might not always love each other, but we always respect each other's position. We also have, and I'm not objective, but we have really smart people here that are bright and are forward thinking. So that investment, there would be, again, beyond our students, of course, they're our number one investment, but then for our human capital to be that next investment is important to me. It's also a large part of our strategic plan, the employee experience, that there is something uniquely different about working towards a vision of synergies between campuses, yet having distinct campuses. Synergies towards a new kind of higher ed, but still retaining that liberal arts core. Synergies around innovation, but still remaining true to the pedagogy that we know works. So it's a joy to work here, and I think anybody who stopped by, I think you might have that sense.
Yeah.
I have said before to Brian that I sometimes feel like this building that we're all in feels like a trading floor on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I love that because I see
forth.
people are back and forth, and I get to see you, and then I see the CFO, and then I see human resources, and then I see marketing. And that's just, I think, symbolic of just the joyfulness of being here and working here.
Yeah, we are. I was in a conversation earlier today about sort of our role, about our role in sort of maintaining and protecting the Benedictine values and practices, this charism, and we take it very seriously. We've had the conversation on this, show in the past about how truly, what does it look like as the last, monastic faculty member retired 2 years ago from St. Ben's, and there are less than 10, I think, still of the monks within our faculty. What does that mean? And it really is, it's us, it's the staff who will help maintain that in relationship. The sisters and the monks are still right here. They're not gone, but we also know that our role in day-to-day is a little bit different. And it is thinking about that community, what it is to be in community. Sister Coleman once reminded a staff, or the IA staff at a meeting, like, I don't know if you all think we're like singing Kumbaya over in the monasteries. She's like, we wrestle with things.
Sure.
We don't automatically just like everyone, she's like, it's living in community is challenging at times,
Yeah, of course.
but you do the work, right? Like you do that work and you are, you wrestle with one another about how to get to the place. You have that conversation about it, and that intentionality of coming to a consensus or a better decision as a group. And I think we learned from that, and you really do feel that here. And I am also biased, so I do think it's a great group of people to think hard things with and think about what could be, think about wonderful things with as well.
Yeah, and remaining intently committed to honoring our founders, and here at St. Ben's to lifting up a women's college and a women's experience.
Yeah, to that end, I will say I shared this story recently with somebody, but it was right before I was going on maternity leave with my youngest, and I was in my office, and president at the time, Mary Ann, came into the office, and I had a student worker right outside my desk, and I heard her say, I knew she was going to meet with me right before I left because I had a scheduled C-section, so she came in, and I hear her say, "Aren't you lucky?" And the student's like, "Yes. Aren't you lucky to have such amazing role models? Women who work and moms who are amazing like Heather is." And we had 5 babies in a calendar year in our offices.
Wow.
So they had seen a lot of us kind of, navigating this thing. And it was just this really like this, this leader of this organization, kind of saying something to a young professional, kind of pointing out in case she missed it or wasn't sure, that was what was happening too.
Wow.
Yeah. And so just somebody reminded me of that this week. And I was like, it's a powerful thing. And it is lovely to be with others sort of as we navigate whatever it is, the caretaking and the sort of sandwich generation that
That's
most
right.
of us are into.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's true.
So, why does human capital matter so much to institutions like St. Ben's and St. John's?
The heart of what we do is not transactional. It's deeply transformational. And so if you line up all of our attributes that are part of our founding, a Benedictine, Catholic, liberal arts, residential experience, that is formative. And the formation occurs through relationship. And you don't have relationship with a monitor, and you don't have relationship just taking a course online. You have relationship in the living and the being. And I think the commitment that we've made to human capital shows. I think that it's also important that the services for students have the highest standard that we know is important for their well-being and their growth. And I am impressed with what we've committed ourselves to. It is something that I think if I were a parent looking at colleges, I would want to know what the priorities of an institution are. And I think that class size, the faculty student ratio, I think the ways in which our students are cared for in residence halls and the staffing there shows a deep commitment. I think that your services outside of the classroom in terms of health and wellness show just how holistic we are in their development, and that takes people. It's important. It's very, very important.
This is a very particular kind of education that we provide, and it does require human capital. And I think too, like we think about, there was a time, when the monastics, this was their vocation too. They were here all the time. And now we replace them with staff and have for years now, and it becomes a really different model. But we also have to, our staff they have families, that they feed and this is a vocation, but also absolutely a career, and a great one. If anyone's interested, join us. Higher education is a terrific place to be.
Well, I would just also say, the amount of bennies that we have on campus, I just always find that amazing. Oh, well, I'm a benny, or I graduated with them. I love that too.
Yeah, it is a really good place that people kind of come back and sort of want to continue working here. Sure.
They do.
So let's turn our attention to a hot topic.
Okay.
In your areas of responsibility, enrollment.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about your role in guiding enrollment at CSB and SJU.
Oh, yes. I came from the enrollment world. It was a piece of my portfolio for many years. And enrollment is the most strategic necessity of a thriving institution, and an enrollment master plan and enrollment strategy, and leveraging financial aid dollars, and knowing geographically where the pools of potential students are. There are so many really important attributes of a fine enrollment operation. We're really very, very excited and privileged to have with us Ed Lamb as our Chief Enrollment Officer. And we have begun working with some third parties to really generate a larger number of leads. And when I say leads, that's potential students. It's a wonderful legacy that we have bennies recommending bennies, but it just isn't enough in terms of the pool. But the demographic cliff and all of that, the sky is falling rhetoric. It just means that we need to craft ourselves differently in how we recruit. And so we're doing that. I like to work deeply with Ed and Betsy on overall strategy and positioning of the brand. We have had some really exciting pieces in the city led by the strategic brand rollout that I think is really helping the awareness.
Yeah.
And I like doing that. And the other piece for enrollment is figuring out what's next. So
Yeah.
it's always a what's next game in enrollment. There are opportunities for different kinds of perhaps programs or opportunities for experiences for high school students or opportunities for adults. We've got to think about that next page, and I'm looking at that too.
There's so much, right? I think in the way that we consume information and where to learn about things, it's never like, what are we going to stop in that space? It's sort of adding another thing and sort of figuring that out. But really, we've talked a lot over the last few years, especially on this show about telling our story differently, loudly to more folks too. So we continue to be very grateful and reliant on alums sharing the good news with others, and we ask that for sure, to do that. But it is not enough. We also have to have folks who've never heard of us hear more about us. We've talked about that so much. Like, we can no longer be a best kept secret. That does not serve us. That's not good stewardship.
Yeah,
right? It's not good stewardship.
Agreed. I think that the other angle to really think about enrollment is the depth and breadth in which we offer this experience to worthy young women that will continue the civic responsibility of bettering society, and can only do that through higher education. And being able to do that means we have to search a little farther and wider. And that's just part of it. And we are happy to do that. The pieces around choice for students, they are bombarded right now.
Yeah.
They really
I have a junior in
are.
high school, I can attest.
Yes, they're bombarded. And so we have a responsibility to speak really uniquely to those students about the transformative and formative experience that they would really harness here. And so because of that, that is why figuring out the ways in which we look different from the rest of the pack, it sounds like a marketing ploy or some kind, but it is absolutely essential to most defining who we are for the student.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about building a class and the various micro segments needed to really get to financial stability.
Thank you for talking about micro segments, because I think that sometimes people think that the shaping of a class is one big strategy, and it's not. It's a series of little strategies that accumulate. And it's a series of strategies over years. So we know that 70% of high school juniors have chosen, now whether they have declared it or the mom and dad know or what have you, but in their mind and their heart, they have chosen where they want to go to school.
Okay,
And it's
so
you better ask your daughter.
No, she's indecisive. She's in the 25%.
But because of that, this isn't something that you're really recruiting seniors any longer.
Right.
However, you don't want to miss the seniors that you might recruit. So you have an entire strategy for current seniors. You have an entire strategy for current, an entire strategy for sophomores. And then you're also gathering and defining strategies for those parents, and then strategies for those guidance counselors, and then strategies for those head of schools, and then strategies perhaps for those chamber of commerce. So there are so many segments of the population that you are really pushing that enrollment lens to. They each require a different strategy. And then you break it down geographically. So, we know, I think my first month here, I was like, what is Hennepin County? And they were like, that's an important county. Like, I get it.
And it's a big one.
It is a big one. So, what we do and how we show up in Hennepin County is probably going to be different than what we do and show up in a county that might perhaps be very rural. So we kind of figured that out. We also look at the demographics of students that are coming out of a heavy science background or students coming out of a heavy arts background, and what programs would we really try to further explain to those two segments. It's complicated, but it's important. And the reason why it's really tied to our financial viability is that we have an opportunity to have a larger volume of a student class. And in doing that year over year, so we have 4 years of the classes that we make, that means that we have much more stability in our revenue, which ultimately leads to that balance and then some real, I think, solid years of good gains in terms of revenues.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things I have appreciated about doing the show and just sort of the way we've been talking about strong integration is I do think we're creating opportunities to really educate our alums and friends about the realities of higher education. And we've been really blessed with having some of the experts in this space, John McGee and others here. But we count you among those. And so I know that you recently wrote an opinion piece for the St. Cloud Times about something that's really impacting students across the state of Minnesota. And that's the current shortfall in funding for the Minnesota State Grant Program. What's the program and how does it impact St. Vincent St. John's and really honestly education across the state?
It is such an important part of our societal commitment to education and educating the future. And it sounds trite, but the ways in which a college degree propels not only society, but individual families is profound. We have in the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota State Grant that offers low to middle income families grant opportunities that really make or break an opportunity for students to attend college, and primarily private colleges. There's a shortfall right now with the state budget of about $240 million. It's looking that it will affect that state grant, and that's going to affect about 72,000 students across our state.
And it already impacted them last year as well.
And there was a recalculation that impacted them last year. The idea that students have instability in their financial package is so troubling to students. The likelihood of them choosing to not attend is great. And that, of course, impacts lots and lots of institutions across the state. But the long game is more important to understand. And it's that year over year, fewer students choosing to go to college impacts all of those societal gains, number one, from the workforce to health, to wealth, all of those pieces. But it also means that there are less employable Minnesotans. So right now, 78% of students that graduate from a Minnesota college work that next year in Minnesota. That's an important revenue generation for the state. So it really is all what high tides lift boats.
Really? Yeah.
It's deeply important. So I would just encourage Bennies that have a real deep understanding of this to reach out to your representatives. It's crucially important that this state grant is folded into the budget, and I was really begging Governor Walz to reconsider. It could be very profound for the whole state.
Yeah, I think about, Minnesota is one of those states that is not necessarily increasing in population size compared to other parts of the country, though there's lots of population decline across the board.
That's right.
And we know that that's part of the demographic cliff, but we also have a situation too where we have a brain drain. We do a great job of educating our students in K-12, and they become very, very marketable for other higher education institutions outside of state. And they are actively recruiting our students and providing with generous financial aid packages. And really that has long-term consequences for the state. It has consequences for employers. It has consequences for the innovation and the growth. And part of what's made Minnesota so strong has been that investment in K-12 through higher education of all types,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely crucial. And I spend a lot of time talking to employers in the region as part of my role. And it's the thing they're the most worried about. And this is just one of the ways in which we can impact how we really invest in
Yes.
our workforce. For sure.
Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
Well, thanks for your advocacy there.
Yes.
And we encourage folks to get more information.
Yes, absolutely.
So kind of a shift from that. So how are we engaging with athletics to maximize enrollment?
Oh, athletics. I have said that the success and the flourishing of an athletic department really resembles the pulse of a campus. And it certainly is like that here. We are really, again, not humble at all about our bennies and their just exceptional work on the field, the pool, the court. The number, I think I have shared with you that the GPA, the highest GPA, is with the volleyball team.
I do know that.
At a 3.8. I can't get
Which is
over
really
it.
incredible.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
They went, as you know, to the NCAA tournament, which was just absolutely thrilling for us. We are really considering the ways that our enrollment strategy can grow with some club sports and perhaps some addition to that. There's new emerging sports all the time. Women's flag football,
Yeah.
is
My daughter's
very-
high school has
sure.
a program starting up.
Sure. So athletics and all of those types of offerings are absolutely part of the consideration and the strategy. We also have a just amazing dance team. They were ranked 5th in the nation when they went to nationals early January. And then our spring teams, they were busy over spring break. We had, let me think of tennis went to Florida and softball went to Arizona and cross country went to Texas and somebody went to Colorado and they did really well and they competed. And I think that just speaks to their commitment and drive. They're a very competitive group and it's a really good way for us to show the strength of our campus.
Yeah, and it is, and we said this, so often too. It's what do they say? It's the fastest route to a C-suite is through athletics for women, which is just it's more about that teamwork and camaraderie and sort of finding the sort of sense of self and confidence that comes with it. But what I love about so many of our bennies is if it's not athletics, it's something else, or it's athletics and it's music.
Yes.
And, we are students at Carnegie Hall. There's so much to be engaged. They are an engaged group.
Oh my word.
Mm-hmm.
They are such an engaged group. I've been on different campuses and these bennies, they don't say, no, I can't. They say, give it to me.
It's the busy bennies.
Give me more.
Yeah.
I just had a text before I came in here from a work study student who's in South Africa this semester. And it was a picture of an elephant wrapping his tusk around her. And I just thought, oh, what an experience. And she is just, loving that, but she's on the dance team and she's so, very, very busy. I would just say, to go back to athletics, this is Celebrate D3 week for the NCAA.
Right.
And there's a big kind of campaign and thread called Why D3. Mm-hmm. And I think it's unique that we are so strong and so committed in D3. D3 is really the purest form of a sport right now. Yeah. Especially when you look at the portal and all the crazy things that are happening at the D1 level. So we are really, I think, offering a premier competitive program for all of our Benny athletes in the ways in which I think competitive athletics were intended to be.
Yeah, especially in that connection with your college experience.
Oh,
as you
totally.
said. I mean, I can attest our student athletes are on the bus, they're studying, we're proctoring tests on the road.
That's
and,
true.
Because they take it seriously. And, it is a means to, it is something they care enough about to continue and they want to compete. And they're very competitive, but they also will bring that spirit to whatever it is they do next. And they're ready for that too when it happens.
They will.
Yeah.
They will. I want to make sure I mention golf and lacrosse.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know that
I
we
was
have,
with the golf team a little bit over spring break in Arizona. So
well, we have
some
such
time
a
with them.
neat
Yeah.
connection there, and we have some many alums that are just so wonderful. It's a neat tradition for our golf team.
It's fantastic. So what's the clear and compelling case for
This is making me
understanding? I know
nervous.
that, like, for understanding the insight for prospective students. So how do we really know what prospective students want from us? And then how do we live that out through enrollment and educational experience here at St.
Yes.
Penn St. John's?
Yes. I would say to you that that's changing, and
Yeah.
and we are really, I think, considering some new ways to answer that question. And that's because the central source of your data, I think about thriving institutions data, is your number one source of guidance. And we've worked hard. Our strategic plan has really called for a greater data governance.
Yeah.
And we have really made great strides in that. It's also a discipline in listening to the data. It's hard when the data says something you don't want it to
Right.
say. And I think thriving, strong institutions have the courage to acknowledge the data and to really listen to what the data says. It isn't always what you want it to say, but you've got to do that. And I think that we have several examples, particularly in the last 18 months, that we have listened to that data.
Yeah.
We've engaged for the last 14 months with a firm that has studied, and you've been on that work with us, that it's such an interesting way to examine the needs and the behaviors of prospective students. They have literally walked with them through the enrollment cycle and queried them at all different times, whether they are in the just searching phase, or if they're going to apply phase, or if they've been admitted phase. And we have found some data that really indicates ways in which students would like to hear from us differently, ways in which students perceive the campus and the physical surroundings differently. And that is really going to change probably some of how we do things. It's also going to shape a little bit of our master plan, which is part of the strategic plan, what our facilities offer, what they look like. That matters to prospective students. So that answer is complicated, but I would say with one word, the clear and compelling thing is data, good data. And it's not a one and done.
No.
It's constant, evolving data that you're layering on top of each other. And it really shows a contemporary student what their perceptions are and what their perceptions aren't. It's very common for me to say, well, the data is saying blah, blah, and someone to say, yes, but that's not either how we do it, or that's not what, well, it might not be, but.
Or they don't know how great it is if they
Right.
just knew. If they just knew it better,
Yeah.
they just know our story
Right.
better.
Right. But they're of a different age,
Yeah.
and they have felt the world in different ways. So we have to look at that data and figure out how to
Sort of speaking of that research, what's been like one of the key findings for you? I know I have some of my own, but how about for you? What's been like the key takeaway from that work?
Key takeaway. Well, I don't know if it was the key takeaway, but it certainly has bolstered me and kind of I've been heartened about the future of our world. It's the deep connection that prospective students see in our values and the values we hold. Is that I just think that the ways in which who we are, our stability and our community, the ways in which that resonates with an 18-year-old right now is profoundly unique to us, and we need to use that more and better. The other piece is the idea that they want more of an totality of experience rather than going to class, taking your class, going to the field and playing your sport, going to the residence hall and doing whatever. They really want to feel like they're immersed in these really interwoven experiences, and they want to have internships, and they want to travel, and so they want it to feel a little bit more organic. And I think that's going to be unique for us too.
Yeah, I think we do such a good job of providing opportunities for folks, but I think what I sort of takeaway too is the intentionality of that, sort of that scaffolding. And we use that phrase a lot in higher education or in education generally, that idea that like you sort of over time sort of grow in that, but really that it's that layering, it's the richness, it's the depth, the ability to sort of understand it because you've had those experiences, I think are true. So what, thinking about the difference that this will make for St. Ben, St. John's, and it's profound. Can you talk a little bit about sort of that significance of the difference, and then how are we going to implement it? How are we going to make sure we realize the potential of this research?
It's exciting, but it has to be actionable too. Dr. Ice, Provost Ice, is working with a really neat group of faculty and staff to kind of reimagine the ways in which we advise students to think more of a team approach with students and their wants and dreams and kind of those early experiences that build on each other. I think that it's going to look a little bit different in terms of your class scheduling perhaps, and maybe the sequence in which we offer things. I think that it's also going to be almost like a one-stop experience that isn't defined by this is academic and this is co-curricular and this is athletics, this is
your
wellness.
faculty, their staff. It's
Right.
Yeah.
I think that that's what it's going to look like. It's going to roll out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We are working already on just the overall conception about it, and that will come out by July 1. And then we're going to really move into the structure, and we hope to have it ready, this new thing, for the incoming class for 26.
Okay.
I know.
It is really, really exciting.
It is exciting.
So I think about that and sort of how will that work, impact the strategic plan. But before we get in, let's talk a little bit about it. Remind us of the sort of 3 strategic directions.
We have 3 really important foci, and the first is around the student experience. And this is really what we're speaking about. What does that mean, the student experience? That's not what is their major, that is who are they and who are they becoming, and what experiential learning contributes to that, what classroom experience contributes to that. So student experience. The second one is financial excellence and operational optimization. So a little bit about what I talked about earlier, refining some efficiencies and strategies, but also really intently and persistently growing that revenue. And then lastly is mission, and being mission centered around our practice. So those are the 3 areas. And I think that the goal is to provide this unique new experience kind of package that hits on all 3 of those areas. So it really helps us build the class for some additional size. It helps us strengthen that experience that only we provide and we give. And lastly, it is all kind of circled and tied with a bow with our mission. So I think it'll be exciting and definitely, I think, one of a kind.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of some of the initiatives that are already underway. So what's fun, new, kind of heading our way as we sort of...
Yes. Well, I think the most interesting piece for the student experience is really looking at the health and well-being of our students in a unique way. And that doesn't mean that it's only the student that raises their hand and goes to the health center and says, hey, you know what, I'm just not feeling myself or whatever. This is every student. How do we invest in literally their mental health and their well-being? And how do we give them those opportunities to know deeper who they are and what they need? And that work is being led by Dr. Pam Bacon, and it's around partnering with the JED Foundation around mental health awareness, and I think that will be lifelong lasting for all of our students. So that is coming. We're also working hard on some academic centers of excellence, which I think will be exciting and provide some unique foci. And lastly, we're working hard on those outside of the classroom, study abroad, internships. How do we make sure that those aren't just for the person that can kind of work it into their schedule? I guarantee for everyone, this is what you get. So that's happening. Then our master plan, it's really coming along, very exciting. I saw some early renderings last week of a couple of proposals that we have. So hopefully maybe soon I'll be able to share with you what's happening there. It's all focused around students and what students have said they need and want on our campus. And lastly, around mission, that's all around this telling our story in this most unique way, the gorgeous brand that Betsy has
I mean,
rolled
that's
out.
the most visible, I think, for
Exactly,
folks, for sure.
yeah. And that we're committed to our foundation, but we're brave enough to want to grow as well. So those are some like early pieces.
So are there any changes? There's so much happening in
Yeah.
higher education. So are there any things that have already sort of changed a little as the landscape, there's sort of the ground underneath us has shifted?
The ground underneath us not only has shifted, I would say it's shifting. it's continuing. I think that we always have to look at transfer possibilities. It's much easier to transfer, and that works well if they're transferring in, but we don't really want it to work so well
They're leaving.
if they're leaving. Yeah. So I think that being transfer ready and targeting more transfers will be new. I think the ways that students find out about us will begin to be new. We're going to make some digital debuts that will be pretty unique. And I think that the ways students choose their major or perhaps their specialty will continue to really evolve, really unique combinations of studies that I don't think we've seen before.
So I'm going to ask one more quick question, and then we'll see if there are any questions from the audience too. But I did want to just talk a little bit about, you have sort of a unique role for us here at St. Ben's. And I just want to pivot just to talk a little bit about this that not everyone might know about. And it's, President Brees has asked you to represent St. Ben's in the Women's College Consortium.
Yes.
And I would love for you to tell us what that is and why it's important for us to be a member.
Oh, thank you for asking that question. It is such a privilege to really represent St. Ben's with about 25 other women's institutions. And it's not lost on me that number changes every year. It dwindles. And so it is important for, I think, St. Ben's to remain a real foundational member of that organization. It's led by just a phenomenal woman, Ann McElhaney Johnson, who's the president of St. Mary's in Los Angeles. And we gather twice a year, and we really try to figure out a couple pieces. A, how do we position ourselves legislatively to ensure that women's colleges are recognized as a unique and distinct piece of the market, just as an HBCU would be, just as a faith-based institution would be, that we need and deserve some unique attention from funding and for policy. Secondly, it's important for us to learn some best practice from each other, and we've certainly done that. And the third piece is that it's important to represent and be present for our alumni, that there are so many women college alumni that don't know the need for women's colleges in terms of activism or philanthropy, and we do that well. I will say this year is the first year that there has been a named Women's College Day. And
I know we celebrated that. It was exciting.
On March 19th, and that's a big deal. We have to make ourselves just more assertive in the market in general. Thanks.
Amy, are there any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do have a couple questions. The first one is coming from Kate. And she is wondering what plans are in the works for CSB student housing to update it to keep us competitive, and are our students happy and healthy, into the future?
And so I don't know if that's a question. Are students happy and healthy, or our students happy? So I'm going to answer both. And I'll just say that Dr. Pam Bacon just has released the findings of our well-being study with our student body. And I think it's quite remarkable. 87% of our students are satisfied or extremely satisfied.
Very high satisfaction.
High satisfaction. There's so many institutions that would pay for that level of satisfaction. So that bodes very well for what we're doing. Does it mean that there are areas that could use improvement? Absolutely. Any campus that I've ever been on, and I'm sure the same with you, Heather, if you say to students, what do you really need? It's like food and parking. Right. Maslow's hierarchy, you know what you need. We did find from that survey that our students love the Centennial Commons and Village. They're beautiful. I never lived in.
They're be nicer than what you live in.
They're
when you
gorgeous.
Leave here.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. And our juniors and seniors really don't feel like there's enough of that type of housing stock, which we understand. So we have to think about that. What does it mean? Where would new stock be? Or is that transforming old stock? That's the first piece. The second piece is that we have a really great rejuvenation project that we've begun on an annual basis. We haven't always done that. And we have to do that to remain competitive. So thank you for the question. And lastly, I would say the living environment is only as good as the climate within our student body. And there's lots of ways that we can bolster that. And that's about healthy choices and healthy living. And that's making sure there's enough workout rooms, and there's the right kind of food, and there's the right kind of extracurriculars. And we're deeply committed to that.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions, Amy?
Yeah, we have another question from Sarah, class of 2007, and she's wondering what gives you the most hope or excitement about the future of St. Ben's?
Oh, Sarah, I don't know if we have enough time. I would say to you that the hope in the future of St. Ben's is very, very bright. And the reason I think that is when I see our outcomes against other institutional outcomes, when I see the number of All-Americans we have, and the number of placements we have with Rhodes, and the number of medical school acceptances, our students are really outperforming. And I have lots of other metrics that I won't bore you with. I know that on that end, we're performing excellent. The other piece of hope is how much that research showed us that the 18-year-old identifies with our values. So it isn't that we are irrelevant to an 18-year-old. No, it's opposite, which is so thrilling and exciting. And so how we meet them where they are and the language that we use with them is just so important. And I'm totally confident we can do that. So I have a lot of hope.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, that's part of it. I think I've always said there's no more hopeful donor than someone who gives us to higher education, because you've chosen to give to something that will be here for a long time, that you believe, and they're giving to somebody who believes if they invest in themselves that they can make a difference. Like, our students are investing in themselves when they choose us. And I also found their excitement about our values so heartening. The idea that they this is not transactional. What we do is not transactional. It's transformational.
It is. Sarah, if you can ever come by and visit, I would love to host you on an admitted student day. It's really thrilling to see those students, and they all show up in a Benny sweatshirt, which I think is so funny. But they're just here wide-eyed, and their parents are with them. And their parents are committed to doing whatever they have to do to get them here. And when you see that, and we have hundreds and hundreds come through like that, that's super encouraging.
Well, we're going to leave on that, end on that
Oh,
hopeful
good.
note, if that's
Okay.
all right.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
thank you, Kara, so
you're
much
welcome.
for a rich and inspiring conversation.
It was a pleasure. But thank you. Thank you for providing this and a chance to connect with the alumni. So thanks, Heather.
It is truly my honor.
Okay.
So audience, thank you as well. We're delighted that you took an hour out of your evening to spend some time with St. Ben's and bringing us into your home.
Thank you again, Kara and Heather, for your time this evening. Audience, you can share additional questions or comments on tonight's episode through the evaluation form that will be emailed to you from the Alumni Relations Office. This concludes tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home. Please check out all the past episodes of St. Ben's at Home on our website. We will share this link in the evaluation email that you will receive in the coming days. Thank you again for all who attended this evening. Have a wonderful rest of the night.